why do we make such a big deal out of death? Isn't death just another state of life?
I've been thinking about that for a couple of days. I guess you've had it on the list for a while, but I think it is the uncertainty. You know that I think there is life of some sort beyond death, beyond the grave, but I don't know what it is. And I was trying to think of a possible analogy strictly on the earthly level. Suppose I was born and raised in some isolated tribe in the mountains of New Guinea, and we had very little, if any, connection to Europeans at all, because they just hadn't come up in our area. And yet we had some contact, and I'm 75 years old, and some missionary doctor says, you you need some medical treatment for your health that will be alleviate the pain, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, quite beneficial to you, but you need to go to Presbyterian Hospital in Manhattan. And I've heard legends and tales about, Manhattan, New York City, all of that stuff. I've heard a little bit about it. There's nothing written in my language, so they're just oral traditions. And I'm thinking, my sense is I should take this doctor's advice, and that there's some charitable organization that'll pay all my expenses. But I'm still going to be rather anxious about it because I don't know what it's like in Manhattan.
Or if you can even get there.
And how I would get there and what I would experience when I got there, who knows?
Right. Well, see, that's the thing. It's the not knowing, which is really spiritually significant, not knowing. And depending on whether not knowing what happens after death seems to you like the fact that you don't know it means that it doesn't exist, then you have one idea of death, and that's probably where the fear is. Although on the other hand, if you think you know what's after death and you think it's going to be bad, you'll have fear of it too.
Well, there's a lot of different possibilities of what one might conceive of as being death.
Oh yeah, there's no limit with the conceiving.
But I think scripturally speaking and theologically speaking, there is no ultimate death. There is the separation from an illusion of life, of perhaps of how you've lived in the world, and you're going to be separated from it.
Yeah, I mean, just like
the soul is not.
I think death is a lot like a person's first marriage. You have no idea what's gonna happen, and depending on what you put into it, it's going to be either really fun or really painful.
Well, I think it may well be that what you can conceive of has something to do with what you encounter after death too.
I think, right. I guess the real point is what have you seen that is real?
Yeah.
And the fact is that if you were talking about human thought, you are not talking about something that's very high in the level of realness.
Right.
It's either of the corporeal domain or it's of the subtle domain. Now then, if you're talking about the spirit, and you might say the eye of the heart, you are seeing aspects of what is real, and they are delivered to you by God. And that's why you have such a wonderful feeling in your heart when you in fact realize one of these things that is given to you. Now then, that aspect of you does not die. It's immortal.
Which aspect?
The aspect of these realizations that come to you and are from the spirit/intellect, not to be confused with the mental thinking of a human being.
Well, I don't know about there's such a clean distinction between thinking and emotioning, and they're all passing forms, but they all partake in the ultimate reality. And if you can experience that connection with a higher reality, then you may warm your heart.
Yes.
Or
I mean,
it might. For some people, it might warm their heads, but Most people describe the heart.
This would be inclusive of everything. Those who realize the revelation of their tradition in some meaningful way in their heart, those who are saints, those and have received some message, those who are prophets, and those who are, you might say, have delivered the meaningful understanding that God has given them, like Moses receiving the tablets on the Mount Sinai. And so at any rate, though all of that comes and approaches man from God, it comes from God, and it in fact is something that he understands to be from God. And it's not an emotion, although it is attenuated with emotions. Emotions couldn't help but be associated with something that was wonderful.
Yeah, if it's a full experience, you can expect an emotional component.
Yes. So at any rate, but it is not driven by the emotion, and its veracity is not a subject of the emotion at any rate.
Well, the smell of a rose in the presence of the image of the rose does have some meaning, that perhaps that image is actually a rose.
And I think the Enlightenment, which was 1700s, was basically the rejection of intellect and the replacement of it with human thought.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
I mean, that's the direction it moved in. It didn't abandon all of the intellect, nor did it fully explore thought. But yeah, that's the direction it moved.
And we're seeing the extension of that into our time in ever greater strength.
So it appears, yeah.
Well, I do think a lot of the more radical mystics, particularly Eastern mystics, tend to push things a bit too far when they say, there's, let's say, a continuance after death, but everything that you think was the person ceases to exist, but that which was really the person continues to exist. It's like saying a painting will continue after it's destroyed and burnt up, but all of the color and all of the form and everything will cease to exist. I think some of the Western conception tends to be more correct when someone like Eckhart says, it's not that the intellect will cease to be, it's not that the memories will cease to be, it's that they're transfigured and there's a certain level of detachment there that we don't understand at this point. For instance, it's not that God memory lacks an intellect, it's that God is all things at all times out. It's like a painting that has, after death, all of the painting removed with turpentine and the canvas removed and the wood burned up, then what's left?
What's left?
Yeah, I think we missed the last 30 to 60 seconds of what you were saying. Just kind of dropped out.
I was just saying that, ultimately with someone like Meister Eckhart, as opposed to the radical Eastern mystics, he's going to say, death doesn't involve the eraser of the intellect or the personality or the memories, but it involves the transformation. It involves certain attachment. The soul that is the painting is transfigured, but it's not destroyed. And what I was saying then is that if you say the soul is a painting and you remove the paint with turpentine and you destroy the cloth and you burn up the frame, what's left? I think there has to be something that is left. I think there has to be something integral there, but there's a transfiguration. And I think that the more I read into the Catholic and Orthodox, I think that they're on to a point there. I think that a lot of later theologians have massively misinterpreted things, but I think that there's a certain fundamental truth there that also Corbin, when he's talking about the more esoteric aspects of Shia Islam, has put his finger on with a kind of spiritual body, a resurrection, not of the body itself, but of a sort of spiritual body, because the soul, as separated from something bodily, is no longer recognizable as the same. And to say there's even a soul-body duality in and of itself, it's incredibly, incredibly problematic. So ultimately, to say that the soul is bodily and the body is soul, and that the two together will attain some sort of life in the unity of God makes, more sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, that you could say the body is the form that expresses something, and the thing it expresses, just like the painting, the thing it expresses is just as real as it was if you destroy the painting. So in many cases, it may well be that what we discover is what was really behind that rear projection screen that we took to be reality.
Yeah, that is the way both of you are describing is consistent with my own view of after death, is that there's a form. I mean, it may not be a bodily or corporeal form, but I will still have some kind of form, and I think I'll have memories of maybe even better memory than I have now about things I did in life, and I have opportunities to reflect on what I did, what I should have done, what I could have done, or whatever. But I think as an individual, I will continue to be, in some sense. Maybe there may be stages later, and we sometimes talk about that absolute reabsorption in the divine in the end, but that would be at the end of all manifestation, I guess.
You can't even imagine or conceive of that.
No.
Until it happens.
Yeah, until it happens. Yes.
Well, I would think that what one would see after death, or what have you, or what would be the immortal aspect of the soul, would include all of the possibilities, realized and unrealized, of that being. And so you would be able to see with the intellect all of the possibilities, the ones you didn't realize, and the ones that could have realized, and the ones that you realized.
Well, how is that different from where we are now?
It is quite a bit different, because you're not seeing all of the possibilities now. If you were, you would be enlightened.
Well, all possibilities is a tall order to actually witness. It's one thing to know, and to know that they are possibilities, but you don't know what all of them are.
Well, I think that with the intellect, you can in fact see that.
Sort of intuit some of it.
But that's the difference between the intellect and the subtle state, the thinking mind.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure there's a clear distinction between them. It's sort of, perhaps think of a ray of light that diminishes in brightness as it proceeds from the source, but it's always the same light, and it always has the same source.
But all of manifestation comes from the principle of being.
That's the source.
Yes. But the intellect is something that comes from God, and one might say even beyond being.
Yeah, but what doesn't have that as its source? What doesn't have that as its ultimate source?
Well, you might say that the source of manifestation is from a secondary perspective. It's from the perspective of creation by being. And beyond being is precisely that, beyond being.
Sure. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a limited perception of it here and now.
That's right. Here and now we do.
Yeah. So I don't...
Primarily a function of the fact that we are operating at the basis of the mind.
Yeah, but it sounds like there's a little discontinuity implied there, and I don't think anything is totally separate from anything else, really. I mean, we may not see the relationship or the connection or whatever, but I don't think that there are strict boundaries. Like, I step across this line and I'm in the Malakut.
Well, I think the boundaries may not be.
I don't think
they may not be real, but nevertheless, you are within the stricture of boundaries until you see beyond them.
Well, on the other hand, how do you know there's a boundary until you see beyond it?
Well, because the scripture tells you there is, and it comes from beyond it. That's the point.
So they say.
Yeah.
My direct heart would say, and so it is, or it will be, but not as they think.
As it was written, so shall it be.
But not as you think.
But not as you think. And anyway, we've spent quite a deal on that conjectural question, but now let's move on to the next one, maybe more concrete. Other than other members of the Tariqa, which living individuals have influenced you most greatly for the better?
That's a hard one.
Well, there have been a number of them. So I don't know about most greatly, but there have been a number of teachings, expositions, or whatever, that have filled in important things in my understanding. And so, I mean, from a lot of different sources, but ultimately they have the same source.
When you say which living individuals have influenced you, does that include maybe the author of books you've read, but you've never met that person face to face? Or are you thinking about a more personal relationship? You've actually met someone, a professor or a doctor or whatever, and
ideally personal relationship, because if you haven't met the living author of a book, it's no different than interacting with the author of a book who's been dead 800 years.
Who's not living, yeah. That personal interaction.
Exactly.
Personal interaction is the question.
I've had personal interaction with some people that have really influenced me greatly for the better. And I don't know if they can influence me additionally or whether I'm done with them. There's still people hanging around in my awareness that I pay attention to.
So I thought of one. It was a friend of mine who's passed away in 2016. His name was Ragnar Overby, and he was 81 at the time, maybe 9 years older than me. And he was from Norway. He was an environmentalist, and he had worked at the World Bank in their environmental group for a total of 15 years, and then had retired. And I had a lot of, he actually came to the Presbyterian church I was in, and I met him, and our families got to be friends, and then we kind of went our separate ways for years. But I met him again in a Costco and started having lunch with him every few months, and we did a lot of correspondence, and he became a kind of a teacher in terms of mostly economics, money, banking, but he was also, he grew up as an atheist, and I think he converted to Christianity when he was about 35 years old, and he was Protestant, and I think after he left that Presbyterian church where he and I met, he went to some what was called a Bible church taught by somebody who was a Messianic Jew, but a big church. I mean, it's apparently quite popular. A good preacher and so forth, pastor, and I was completely open with him from the beginning about my embrace of Islam and the things I had done in terms of going on the Hajj and going to Cairo numerous times. But he was just a good, decent person who understood me and taught me. I mean, I did learn a lot about how money and banking works on a sort of from a higher level, what you'd call macroeconomics. I looked him up. For some reason, I just Googled his name to see what he might be on the internet. And in the latter part of his life, he got into the game of what's called disc golf. And he showed me, he just happened to live near a park that had a disc golf course set up. And
is that like Frisbee golf?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
all right.
Frisbee golf.
Because I've seen places where people do that.
At any rate, he showed me a time or two, and I remember trying to, throw toward this little, I don't know, whatever you call it, a cage that catches the Frisbee. But he had a league. It was called the Ragnar Overby Disc Golf League, and they have.
I wonder who founded it.
He was very prominent in it. He didn't found it.
No, but I mean that league.
Some people who must have admired him greatly to name them.
Oh, I see.
I think he was the oldest member of the. It was mostly younger people.
All right. Well, it's an honor.
It's something he got into probably when in his 70s and was good at it. So that was a positive influence in my life, and I regret. I mean, there's several people friends of mine who passed away, and I think about them, and I sort of look forward to having a chat with them someday beyond the grave.
Well, yeah. I think, the most important people are the ones that show you yourself in ways that you might not have seen otherwise. That's ideally what comes out of your first or second or third marriage. But also a relationship with some wise person, because ultimately that the person can impart is in you. It arises out of you. It doesn't come out of this person's mouth. It lands on you and takes form, or takes whatever it is, provides an understanding. And some of the people that have made a big impression on me have in fact shown me things about myself that I didn't know, not all of which I liked, by the way, but it's, the path is self-knowledge after all. I think the ultimate goal of the eye of the heart is to see itself, which is quite a feat.
So you're saying that the individual you're thinking of was your wife?
No. I mean, I have learned important things from my relationships, but I was thinking more of particular teacher or author, and two of them are still around, and I have met them in person, but not everything I learned from them I learned in person. But it doesn't matter. I mean, the point is that there was a real connection and interaction at some point along the line, so it's not just words in a book. But yeah, there are such people, and some of them are still alive.
That's getting harder and harder to say.
What?
That some of them are still alive.
Yeah, I know. They keep disappearing. They're all just passing forms.
Speaking of that, there was a fictional dialogue I read once. All right. So I read this dialogue between two monks who ended up in heaven, and one of them said to the other, "Isn't it funny how much time we've spent in the world talking about death and the afterlife, when it's as simple and clear as the sparkling sea and as self-evident as the sun in the sky? I thought that was nice. I mean, sometimes we talk so much about things that, are just simple, and we tend to make them complex.
Yes. Well, trying to define them will end in endless complexity, but you can still get a whiff of them and an intuition of them, but it won't be as you think, because it'll be whatever you experience that you haven't already experienced it. You don't have a memory from which to recognize even what it's similar to. So my feeling is, well, let's wait and see. It ought to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I think no one religion has everything right. I think a lot of religions, almost every religion has a lot of things that are right and some things that are wrong.
Oh yeah.
It's only the crazy fundies that are wrong on everything. And accidentally, sometimes they might be right on one or two things, but generally speaking, they're wrong.
Who?
The crazy fundamentalists.
Oh yeah. They wouldn't know truth if it bit them in the ass.
And
I'd convince them of something. Who knows?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. It's sort of like talking about reality, and let's see, who it was between. Oh, I forget who it was between. Barkley and somebody. If I stub my toe, that's real. The other guy said, I'm sure somebody here has heard that before.
Well, yes, I think he stomped his foot. Was he the one that stomped his foot on the corner or the pavement or whatever?
Yeah,
That's real.
Yeah, he said, that's something that's real, not all this stuff you keep talking about.
Yes. Barkley and who was it? Hume did away with a whole lot more.
Yeah, it was a contemporary whose name I recognized, but I don't know that much about.
Well, from that period, there weren't very many good thinkers. Barkley was one of them, and then later on, you've got some interesting Platonic, Hegelian English thinkers, but the English language and the English tradition hasn't been particularly rich in the kind of mysticism that we talk about. It's rather British and rather sober. I mean, even the really great British mystics are rather sober compared to the continental tradition or the South Asian tradition, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Even you look to the difference between the northern German Dominicans and the southern Italian Franciscans, and all of the same things are being said by, let's say, Angela Foligno and Meister Eckhart. But Meister Eckhart, as much as I love him, says things almost in a cold and dispassionate way, whereas Angela, she says it with such a fire that you're like, come and take me. I want to go with you and hold your hand and burn together.
Yeah, well, both are necessary.
And tell me again the name of the person that you're comparing to Eckhart?
Angela Foligno.
Angela.
That must be the Southern Italian.
Yes. She was a Franciscan from the province of Umbria, so middle Italy.
A woman.
And her writings are fantastic. Not very much. Her complete writings are maybe only 250 pages, but some anyway. I'll let it alone for now, because as you can see later on in the questions, maybe we'll get to it next Tuesday. I'm going to probably be bringing her and a couple of other wonderful Catholic female mystics.
Oh, good. Bring some interesting guests.
Yes, from the spirit world.
Well, besides, we've run out of time tonight.
Yeah, perhaps. Did we ever get Seda Bahia connected? I can't tell.
I'm here.
Can
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. I just had nothing to add, but I enjoyed listening very much.
All right.
So you were there.
They call it lurking.
Yeah, exactly. And providing an example of emptiness.
Well, on my screen, it has my name and your initials, Siddhi Pelha, and of course then the beautiful Phoenix. I just assumed my name appeared on everybody else's as well.
It does.
Oh, okay.
It's just that we had heard you.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'd
true.
asked you a question or two and didn't get an answer, so
Oh, really? Oh, I obviously wasn't listening well enough.
Or maybe you had to get a drink or go to the bathroom.
yeah. Who knows?
It happens.
So we
Well-
will reconvene next Tuesday, and this time probably have Sheikh Al-Bashir online.
Yeah, inshallah. I hope so.
Yes.
We'll ask him what he learned from TED. He often refers me to one or two of the talks that he enjoyed the most when he comes back.
Well, and
from one of these.
he's also presenting this time around, so
Oh,
we're
he
going to be
is.
treated to a new one of his videos.
All
Oh,
right.
good. Is it another 5-minute or 7-minute one, or is it a little longer?
It's another short one.
It's another short one, and it's about sacred geometry. So
Oh, nice. All right. What that would, yeah,
it's a good one.
that makes sense.
Sacred
Something he has a genuine interest in.
All right. Until next week.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel.